What does it tell you when a growing number of central banks throughout the world are buying gold, a record amount in 2022? What about when you shift your focus back home domestically to the United States, where a growing wave of states are moving forward with legislation to allow their citizens to reclaim their constitutional right to use silver and gold as legal tender, real money? Today, we are fortunate to be joined by Mr. Pat Holland. He's a wealth of knowledge in this area, this growing number of states passing legal tender legislation. As a matter of fact, here in Missouri, he has been instrumental in supporting SB 100, which has already passed the Missouri Senate. And we have some exciting breaking news. Will go before the Missouri House on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. SB 100 will grant Missouri citizens the right to use gold and silver as legal tender. I hope you enjoy my interview with Mr. Pat Holland. Welcome back to Ron's Basement. Today we are fortunate to be joined by Mr. Pat Holland. He's a leading figure helping to forward legislation in Missouri to let Missouri residents regain their constitutional right to use gold and silver as legal tender. There is so much going on right now in the world: geopolitical issues, financial issues, banking issues, inflation issues, CBDCs on the horizon. Many states across the country are forwarding similar types of legislation, and Pat has agreed to join us today to give us an update on Missouri, which is where he's primarily focused, but maybe he'll also share with us some updates or information that he may know regarding other states. Pat, welcome back to Ron's Basement.
Hey, Ron, thank you for having me back. And it's nice to be joined by you and the silver and the gold bear again.
We're all happy. And I know on behalf of my viewers with us right now, I want to say thank you. I know you're very, very busy. What's the latest? What's going on in Missouri? What's going on with you? Give us an update, please.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, as far as Missouri goes, SB 100 has actually been assigned to committee in the House. It was sitting for 6 weeks without a home. Now, others may say, well, that's how they kill a bill. Well, they can kill a bill that way, but that's also partly by, how the system is designed to work in Jefferson City, Missouri. So there's always that period where, especially with how fast we went through the Senate, at, literally breakneck speed through the Senate. It was amazing to see. But now we've been assigned a committee in the House, and that's government accountability. The Special Committee on Government Accountability is the name of the committee. So I sent an email out to all my folks, basically to let them know, and also all the people who are on that committee, their telephone numbers, of course, at office telephone numbers, and their email addresses so they can support the bill. So we're about ready to start moving again and rocking and rolling with this, and it's very popular in the state of Missouri. This is a popular bill.
And this would give Missouri citizens the right to use gold and silver as legal tender, but it also, just as a quick review, will give some other rights as well. There's some other aspects of this law. Could you remind us what else it may do?
You bet. One of the things it does is remove the last vestige of tax on gold and silver, and that's on capital gains. So some people refer to it as an income tax. Because if you make money on your investment, you have 5 ounces of silver and it goes up in value and you go sell them, you're supposed to report, the profit that you made, selling your gold and silver, and then pay taxes on that. So that's capital gains tax, and that is going away. That'll be completely gone on physical gold and silver. So, and that's that in the state of Missouri only.
And that makes no sense. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to throw this in. That makes no sense. That would be like being taxed on paper money you have in your wallet. Gold and silver in the Constitution are designated as money, as legal tender. So the fact that you could tax that makes absolutely no sense.
Well, there's a physics problem here too, because if you take, $1,000 and stuff it in your mattress, And if that goes up in value and you take it out and you go spend it, there's no tax on that. Well, there technically is, I suppose, because you still have sales tax, but that's not a capital gains or a gains tax. That's just plain sales tax. But the same thing is true, basically when it comes to gold and silver. You have the same amount of silver. It was still 5 ounces. But if you have a savings account, you get more of those digits in your account, and then you get taxed on the extra digits you got, called interest. So there's no such thing as interest with gold and silver. It just doesn't exist. 5 ounces is 5 ounces is 5 ounces. Even if you put it someplace and hold it, it just goes up in dollar value. And the fact is the dollar's going down in value. That's why your gold and silver goes up. But so at any rate, yes, we get rid of that with our bill. One of the exciting aspects of our bill is basically at least not less than 1% of Missouri's reserves will be held in physical gold and silver. So a depository of sorts. Now, it's not in a depository in name, but it is a depository in function. And other states are doing this too. We'll get into that in a second here. And that is, if you want to say, why are they doing that? At the very least, I can tell you this from talking to legislators in other states. It's to shore up their pension, their state pensions, because they know inflation is killing them on holding bonds. It's not working very well. They're not keeping up with inflation. And when you're not keeping up with inflation and bonds, more bonds have to be liquidated to make the same amount of payment that you would, and literally it'd be the equivalent of gold and silver going down in value as well. You have to liquidate more of it to make that dollar payment. So it's shoring up their pension funds is what these states are trying to accomplish. It's state pensions.
And that was a big key reason, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, why Tennessee took the action they took. I mean, I think they explicitly said, like, hey, we're getting killed on all these bonds. I mean, bonds, just so everybody out there watching knows right now, when the Fed raised rates over the last 12 months at a record pace, it's not record high rates, but it was a record pace from like 0 to whatever it is now, 4.75%. That absolutely killed the value of bonds, anywhere from 15 to 40%, depending on the duration of the bond. There's an opposite reaction between interest rates and the value of a bond. A fancy way to say that is inverse, but it's just a fact. So any pension fund, including state funds that held a lot of bonds, and this is a whole different subject, but this was also the reason why we saw Silicon Valley Bank and some of these other, why the banks are in trouble, is because the value of the bonds they bought went down significantly. And states like Tennessee are taking action to shore up their pension funds by now allowing the state funds to hold silver and gold. Sorry, I interrupted you, Pat.
No, you're right. I mean, another way of putting it, is that states' pensions funds are being financially molested by the Federal Reserve and the federal government. The states are not stupid. They see this happening. And by the way, as far as Tennessee goes, well, fix your wagon. They went and got a depository before we did. Gosh darn it. We were supposed to be first. Tennessee, congratulations on your depository. You're doing the right thing. And God bless you for getting it done as fast as you did. From the date that it was entered in legislation until the date they actually had it signed by the governor was just over 2 months. This has happened at breakneck lightning speed, faster than anything I'd ever seen before. You know why? Because they're smart. That's why they know what's coming. The states have to do something, and it's not Bitcoin, folks. I know my Bitcoin friends, and I have a lot of Bitcoin friends, are angry when I say something like that. But I'm telling you, I've been looking over the Constitution, and I just don't see Bitcoin in it. It's not there. Gold and silver are. And so if we go with something constitutional and it's 5,000 years of history, we're better equipped to go through the legislative process.
And it's not just the states that are exerting their independence. Let's just throw in another fact that it is central banks around the world, what many consider to be the most or highly sophisticated financial institutions, bought a record amount of gold in 2022.
Very important to point out, and I've been corrected before, and rightfully so. When I say something wrong and someone, like for instance, I've been attacked for saying that Saudi Arabia is taking gold for oil. Now, the thing is that was a very complicated transaction that happened with Russia. But they did in fact take gold for oil. It is a fact. You can't get around that. But going back to what we're talking about, I think it's very important for people to understand Eastern central banks are hoarding gold and silver. Western central banks are not, at least not that we know of. They may be in the background. Like, we've not heard about the Federal Reserve hoarding gold, or silver. We've not heard that at all. We've not heard about Australia doing it. We've not heard about Canada. In fact, the famous story about Canada is they pissed away all their gold. I mean, they literally did. And this was, from like 2010 on, they're down to, the last I heard was like 43 1-ounce coins in their central bank. And that's not a joke, guys. You can look this up. I'm not making this stuff up. And they even advertised it. Yeah, we got 43 gold coins. And I wonder what the significance is of holding on to 43 gold coins in your central bank is. That must be a special number for them, or be an Illuminati thing, or I don't know what it is.
Well, the UK, I believe, as well, got rid of all theirs.
They did.
But isn't it so interesting, Pat, that we have Eastern central banks and individual states here in the United States? I mean, because the Constitution, or the way that our government was set up, is still, there's like this, maybe there's, I want to get your thoughts on this. Maybe there's this fast closing window of opportunity.
I think so.
That a lot of the states are realizing, like, wow, we better do something, and we better do it quick.
I agree, Ron. This is the year. 2023 is the year to get gold and silver legislation done. July, the central bank, digital currency gets released for you and me. Yay. Probably on July 4th, Independence Day, because they're sick and twisted that way. That's, by the way, I don't know that it's July 4th. I just threw that out there to make a joke. But let me say one more thing here, and thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it, because I want to make a special announcement. It's now 22 states that have legislation going towards gold and silver being legal tender in their states. Now, it's already lawful money. We're talking about dual citizenship for gold and silver in both the matrix and in the real world. They will have it both. That will encourage businesses that unfortunately work within the matrix. And there's a lot of reasons why businesses work in the matrix. Most of them are not something to write home about or to be proud of. And that's because they're dependent on the federal government. And so that's the reason why. But once you bring it into the corporate realm, once you bring it into the United States, corporation realm, by using the term legal tender, it opens doors for gold and silver for businesses to be more comfortable to use it. So we have 22 states. Texas has joined. Texas already had a lot done, but they're shoring up their depository. Oh yes, they've changed quite a bit of language. We're not going to go into the individual states and their languages, because this would be a filibuster. This would go on for about an hour. Kansas has Kansas has already been in the fray. New Jersey is another new one. New Jersey. So that's New Jersey is working on getting rid of the sales tax on gold and silver, which is the first step to getting legal tender, because you can't be a legal tender and tax the currency, for exchanging it. Maine was already there. Arkansas. You remember we talked about Arkansas. We knew that one was coming. So we had more states. Now we've lost a state too. So I got to report the bad news, and that's Wyoming. Wyoming, the legislators voted down the depository. Now I have a theory as to why. And that's because the legislators wrote within, basically the legislation, that the treasurer had 3 options, and only 3 options available to them on how they would store gold and silver. And they had until January 1st, 2024 to make it happen. So they kind of pressed I do believe the treasurer of the state of Wyoming said, don't tell me what to do. I am not comfortable with this legislation at all. And all they had to do is go around and talk to, the members of the House, the General Assembly, the Senate as well, and say, I'm not comfortable with this. Don't do this to me, please. And that's all it takes for legislators to go, well, our treasurer is saying he's not comfortable with this. We're forcing him to do something that he doesn't think he can get done, and that he would be in violation of the law if he can't get it done in a certain time, or if he finds a better option, he'd have to wait till next year for new legislation. And so our legislation in the state of Missouri is different that way. We have literally not tied our treasurer, and that's Mr. Malik, our treasurer. We have not tied his hands with our legislation. He literally can take any route he wants to for storage of gold and silver. There's not even a framework for him. So he can take a free market solution. He can create his own vault. He can go to the comptroller. He can use a hybrid situation using all three or two. And also there's no time frame given to him. So we did not push his back against the wall because we need his support with this legislation. And I met with the treasurer, and this was 3 weeks ago, and even wrote him a really nice letter after our meeting. And this was from Knock and Shock. We had 30 folks standing in the hallway talking to the treasurer in the Capitol building, because we needed to know that he was comfortable with the legislation. And guess what? He had concerns. But guess what? We were able to allay every single one of his concerns, and he is now neutral on the bill. But that's the power of grassroots activity. No one had gone to the treasurer to talk to him about, what he could do, what his options are. The fact that he needs to look at other states and see what they do. Call up treasurers in other states and say, how are you storing gold and silver? What works for you? What doesn't? What problems have you had? What was, easy to do? What can make the state money? Can we make money having a depository? The answer is yes, by the way. You can do that by storing rich citizens' gold and silver in your vault. Charge them a fee for it. So if you create your own vault, you can make money doing it. There's also free options. You use a third-party solution for storing gold backs, basically like UPMA Bank and Gold Money. They'll store your gold backs for free. So, there's lots and lots of options. And the fact is, he's comfortable to the point where he's saying he's neutral with it, but he's not spending a lot of time looking into his options right now. He's waiting for the bill to be passed, and then he will take that very seriously and start looking into it. And I'm sorry for the rant.
No, you're fine. And I can tell you from my own research, there are a lot of different vaulting options available to individuals, to government entities, to
Indeed.
all over the country. There's one IDS I was actually happened to be looking at last night. They have a vault, and one in Ontario, I think it is, one in Delaware, I know for sure, and a new one in Dallas, Texas, where people, entities, whatever it is, you have like absolutely segregated and allocated storage of your precious metals. They, when your metals arrive there, they take a picture of it, they shrink wrap it with then an identifier tag on it that indicates that it's yours as an individual, and then they store it. And I'm sure if you want to, I don't know this to be a fact, but if you want it, they'll, and you're able to, you can get it taken out. And I'm sure even if you wanted to, I was talking to the head of a big, one of these companies that helps people transfer their IRAs into silver and gold. And he, after I'd researched this IDS, and he said, oh yeah, I go down there every year and audit, to make sure that I pick 200 random customers, and I go down and make sure that all the silver and gold is there. So there's, and I know UPMA does a great job up in Utah, right? Same thing. We both know Charles Lewis from there. I mean, there's legitimate ways. I mean, if people or government entities don't want to do it themselves, there's great other options to store your individual metals. First Mining Gold is a development company advancing two of the largest gold projects in Canada. Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet, located in Quebec, each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has zero debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects.
Yep. And once again, I mean, I would recommend to the average person that he doesn't have $1 billion of precious metals, try and store it at your house, because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Now, that doesn't mean that UPMA is an unsafe place to have it, but UPMA Bank is in Utah. If you live in New Jersey and you're storing in UPMA Bank and you need your metals, and the electronic system is down, you might have a problem getting to that vault, especially if you're using digital dollars and you have a debit card that won't let you travel more than 15 minutes away from where you live. There's a lot of, I could paint all kinds of weird scenarios like that, but it's very important to have some of your precious metals, basically with you or close to you where you can get to it easily, even if it's buried somewhere, in a hermetically sealed container, by the way. You don't want your silver to start discoloring on you.
So, Pat, what do you think is behind all this? Why suddenly right now are all these states, right? We could go through the list: Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee,
Idaho, Wyoming, Tennessee.
I mean, why? And this is like, and these are grassroots movements for the most part.
I think so.
What is going on? I mean, we can go down a couple of rabbit holes on that subject, but any just basic thoughts about what's causing this?
Absolutely. If you follow finance at all, you know that the dollar is failing. Now, this isn't, we don't need to, you talk about this all the time. And I'm sure that, but just by answering comments in your videos before that I've been on, your folks are smart. They're asking good questions. And also they understand the content. They understand the dollar is dying. It's over, folks. I mean, the fact that the dollar is still transacted in right now doesn't mean that the dollar isn't on its way out, because it is. States know this. They understand this, but they also understand that they're between a rock and a hard place right now, unless they go back to the Constitution at this point. And on top of which, states literally have to be seeing from their point of view that all the bonds that they're holding for their reserves are losing value very quickly. This is not yes, they've been losing value slowly over time. Since COVID, these bonds are hurting. I mean, these states are losing money. The states don't know what to do when they're losing money. Bonds have always been the safest investment vehicle known to man. Now, they didn't make a lot of money, but you didn't lose any. You kept up with inflation. You always did. So it was a safe asset. Now they're seeing that it's an extremely unsafe asset. I'm not even going to say volatile, because it's not volatile anymore. It's just going down in value quickly. And that's because of the overprinting of the dollar. States have to protect themselves. Now, when we're talking about state pension funds, believe it or not, that's what I think they think of first.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about Ron and Pat in Missouri. They're not thinking, how do we protect Ron and Pat from the Federal Reserve? They're not thinking that. They're thinking about, oh my God, everyone on the state retirement plan, basically we're selling more bonds than we're used to. And, in order to keep up those pension payments, to those folks who were promised it, and so we legally we're obligated to provide that. So I think we need to do that. So that's part number one. Depositories, guys. Of all the states, there's 22 states and there's probably more, but my God, if you're ever in a position where you're actually searching through Legiscan for states legislation on stuff, it really kind of makes you wish that you weren't alive anymore. But trust me, it's after 2 or 3 hours of that. So I'm very grateful to the folks at the 10th Amendment Center who do that for me. I pull in data direct from them because I don't have time for that. But so we talk about the depositories, and it's happening in a lot of states, tons of them. In fact, the depository is becoming acute at this point. I mean, most states that are doing something are looking at depositories or already have legislation in for depositories. But point number two, legal tender. That's where they're helping Ron and Pat. That's where they're thinking, hey, how can we help Ron and Pat in the state of Missouri? What we can do is make businesses more comfortable with the idea of transacting in gold and silver. Therefore, we attach the term, the name tag, legal tender, to what's already lawful money. So states have to be thinking along these lines. And by the way, states that don't do this, California comes to mind. California is not doing anything with gold and silver. And by the way, I've made phone calls. I've tried to get it in there. No one's interested in taking it, oddly, or a couple were interested in the idea, but they said it'll never get done. We can't get it done in this state. So there are some conservative, legislators in California, believe it or not. So you take that into account. But also too, in Missouri's bill, we did something very special, which I hope is being emulated in other states, which is literally saying you cannot mandate a digital currency for the only form of payment for taxes or services from the state. So they're protecting, once again, they're thinking about you and me on that, Ron. They're protecting us from the state becoming a monster, a tyrannical monster that demands that we get a digital wallet and do business in the digital dollar, for us to pay our taxes. Because if we don't pay our taxes, then they're going to come after us criminally. So Missouri has thought that far ahead, to actually take care of its constituents that way as well.
Making sure you aren't absolutely required to be sucked
Correct.
into the new matrix. Basically.
Right. Now they will take it, of course, when it becomes available, they will take it, but it's against the law for them to say that's the only way you can pay your taxes.
Yeah.
So what is legal tender is what the state of Missouri has in SB 100 is the dollar, electronic versions of the dollar, or electronic payments of the dollar, not digital dollar, electronic transfers of the dollar, and gold and silver. Those are the only two forms of legal tender that are in the Missouri bill. So Missouri is defining what is money in the state of Missouri, what is transactable currency and money. So hopefully other states are following suit. And I know that this isn't your standard show when you have me on. So I appreciate people paying attention to what I have to say about this, because this is the lifeboat we have in the state of Missouri. This is
Go ahead.
The Federal Reserve, gang, I'm going to paint another picture for you. The Federal Reserve and the federal government are the Titanic. And there's not enough lifeboats to go around. And I know that for a fact because I tried to get this legislation in California. They won't take it. They simply won't take it. And there are other states. Illinois won't take it. I'm trying to get this in other states, gang. And that's because I care about people. This isn't about making money with gold and silver. This is about being able to buy food. This is about being able to travel, which may be restricted to you when the digital dollar becomes the only form of currency that some states accept. So this is critical. When your folks watch these videos, I hope they take how serious I am about this and how hard I've worked towards this, because it is the only viable option that we have.
Yeah. I want to interject something before I forget. I want to point out to everybody watching right now that Pat has worked on this for free. Is that an accurate statement, Pat?
That's correct. There's no corporation. There's no system to donate. There's nothing. That's correct. I do this in my own time, but so does everyone else in my organization. I need to point that out in the Missouri Freedom Initiative. It's not just me.
Yeah. And so, there's no membership, there's no suggested donation.
Nope.
There's nothing, there's no t-shirts that Pat is selling.
No, I am selling t-shirts.
Oh, he is selling. I'm sorry.
That's in local meetings. We don't do it on the website.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is this is not a money-making scheme for you. This is genuinely something you're doing because you believe in it. And because you believe it's good for obviously you, your fellow citizens of Missouri, but I also think you also believe that it's good for citizens of the United States as a whole as well.
Yeah, because I see we have seen in our lifetime, and I've always been into gold and silver. Yeah. And there's an aspect of me that wants gold and silver to go up in value and be able to buy more stuff with it. I get that too. But this is not the drive of what we're doing in these states. This has nothing to do with driving up the price of gold and silver. It never was. When, we did this in Missouri, this was literally the digital dollar and inflation, period. End of story. There is in fact, with the people that I deal with, and we're talking about statewide, when we do a knock and shock, when we go up to Jefferson City, we're joined by people from all over the state. And these folks are not sitting talking to me, how much do you think silver is going to be worth, when this goes through? There's no discussion like that.
Right.
because these people are very serious like I am, and they understand the nature of what's going on with the dollar right now.
Yeah.
The dollar is dying, folks. And we talked earlier about willful ignorance and brainwashing. This is, a very serious situation that's going to probably end up taking a lot of people's lives. When the dollar goes down, there's a resource problem, gang. I hate to say it that way, but there is a resource problem.
Food
and
energy. Yeah.
Correct. And so this is a very serious situation many people are going to face, is they're not going to be able to get food or energy without the digital dollar. And then they will be enslaved into something that, for instance, we talk about 15-minute cities. We talk about, limitations on, how far you can travel. That's what a 15-minute city is all about, by the way. Talking about, deciding what foods you can buy. Boy, if you want to buy a firearm, you're in trouble when it comes to the digital dollar, because you won't be able to do it. You won't be able to buy bullets. It's programmable, folks. It's a programmable currency, and they will be able to determine what you can buy based on your social credit score, or on the business side, your ESG score. Mm-hmm. And before long, the businesses have to go along with what the edicts coming from the federal government, whether it's legal legislation or not. It's not about legal legislation at that point. It's about making sure that you toe the line and that you accept, unfortunately, the coming tyranny. That's what social credit scoring and ESG is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about what's going on right now with the states, I get this visual of an escape hatch.
It is.
And that the states are, and in escape hatches, whether it's in a plane, a tank, whatever, it's a way for people to save themselves in situations of distress. And I feel like the states, the ones that are moving forward with this, are pulling the escape hatch and trying to maybe provide their citizens with some safety.
Yes, and provide themselves some safety too. We're talking pension funds here. A state pension fund is not a laughing matter. That is a very serious business.
Sure.
And when they're all these bonds that are disappearing from the vaults, basically digital bonds, probably in a bank, actually is what they are. But the amount of them they're having to sell to keep the same amount of pension going out is alarming to them. That's the problem here. The bonds are losing against inflation, and they had to give inflation increases, just like the federal government did with Social Security.
Yeah.
So this is a systemic problem that you can't get away from, folks. And it's not just here in the United States. We talked in the other video about exporting inflation all over the world.
Right.
This is happening in other nations because of the dollar having world reserve currency. The BRIC nations are unfortunately the solution to the world, and Mexico joining them should give you pause. They're one of our closest allies. They're certainly a close neighbor. I mean, you got Mexico and Canada. Canada's going with us lockstep. They're not going to disassociate themselves from us. We're too closely associated with Canada, and that's because of Biden and Trudeau. But Mexico is a different story. Mexico is special, and we can talk about it for a second because it'll make people real happy.